Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're opening a genuinely grim, confidential dossier on a truly fascinating subject. We're diving straight into the inescapable architecture of fate surrounding the Great Red Beast. If you've ever wondered what happens when an unstoppable cosmic destiny slams right into an immovable, intensely stubborn will, well, you're exactly in the right place. We'll be breaking down this case file in 6 quick acts. We've got the burden of prophecy, a blue-collar anomaly, the Byronic hero, a mosaic of scraps, shadows of isolation, and finally, the power of no. Our goal? To figure out how a supernatural anomaly manages to subvert literal apocalyptic prophecies through sheer unyielding stubbornness. All right, let's get into it.
Act 1. The burden of prophecy, the architecture of fate. To really get why this matters, we have to lay out the absolutely terrifying stakes and the oppressive destiny originally built for him.
Right from the very moment he was summoned out of the dark, the sheer cosmic weight placed on this guy was just staggering. We're talking ancient demonic voices echoing from the void. And they didn't just invite him over, they offered him a literal throne of fire, declaring him the harbinger of the end times, and calling him by his true, terrifying name, Anung Unrama. Imagine that. You're born and instantly, ancient demonic deities are demanding you trigger the apocalypse.
And this prophecy, it isn't just some abstract mystical idea floating around. It is incredibly physical. He carries the burden of this preordained fate attached to his actual body. That massive stone right arm, the right hand of doom, it's a literal key meant to unlock the destruction of absolutely everything. So, he can't exactly just walk away from his destiny. It is permanently grafted onto him.
Act 2. A blue-collar anomaly, willful resistance. Because despite this insane, terrifying cosmic setup, who he actually chooses to become is completely unexpected.
You really have to look at the striking contrast here. On one side, the grandiosity of the cosmos demands an apocalyptic destiny. They want a king of monsters. But on the other side, look at the reality. Instead of some dark lord, he is essentially a blue-collar worker in a supernatural world. He investigates the bizarre, clocks in, punches a monster, and clocks out. He actively chooses this grounded humanity and incredibly mundane morality over the grand, fiery throne of a god.
So how does he actually pull this off? He combats this inescapable architecture of fate through intensely physical, willful resistance. The absolute best symbol of this? Taking a saw and grinding his own demonic horns down into small, blunt nubs. It's such a violent, visual rejection of his lineage. But it goes way beyond the physical. He keeps up this constant, cigar-chomping bravado, constantly deflecting the grandest, darkest declarations of destiny with a heavy dose of dry wit. And that humor, it's really a protective mask. It hides a profound vulnerability, allowing him to just define his existence by his own everyday actions.
Act 3. The Byronic hero, a fallen figure. Decades of walking this tightrope between what the universe demands and what he actually wants have shaped a wildly complex, tragic psychological profile.
He suffers from what we'd call classic Byronic ennui. Now, this isn't just being a little tired. It's a deep, profound world weariness. It's this exhausting toll born from decades of fighting 1,000 thankless battles against supernatural horrors that the rest of humanity will literally never even acknowledge. He's this eternal outsider, right? He's trapped between a human world that fears how he looks and a monster world that constantly tries to crown him as their dark king. Underneath it all, he harbors this desperate longing for a normalcy that his very existence completely precludes. But despite that crushing sense of isolation, he possesses this deeply moral soul. His defining trait is a fierce intellectual and spiritual independence, which is a total hallmark of the Byronic hero's rebellion against authority and fate. The cosmos looks at his demonic nature and labels him a fallen figure. But the brilliant irony is that he absolutely refuses to actually fall. He completely rejects his grand, dark destiny in favor of his own quiet, mundane morality.
Act 4. A mosaic of scraps, the quiet tragedies. To truly understand his universe, we have to look away from the epic, apocalyptic battles and start looking at the quiet margins of the world. Picture this. Imagine a weary traveler arriving in a vast, fog-shrouded library, tasked with recording the history of a crumbling world. He's given a single, heavy, grand tome, a book meant to hold the central narrative, the epic struggles, the kings, the cosmic cataclysms. But as the traveler looks closer, he realizes this grand book is completely cold and hollow. It's just a skeleton without a heartbeat.
The grand destiny is, frankly, empty. But as he wanders the periphery of the library, the traveler finds thousands of loose, tattered scraps of parchment tucked into forgotten corners. These whispered fragments are the true heartbeat of the world. They tell stories of greedy merchants bargaining with shadows for golden coins, only to find their souls bartered away. They talk about lonely, misunderstood monsters weeping in the moonlight for a touch they can never receive. They chronicle the small, sudden, tragic losses of families just trying to survive in the quiet, terror-filled spaces between the wars of gods. When our subject interleaves these fragmented, folkloric encounters into his own life, the world finally takes on depth. It becomes this incredible mosaic of the strange, the cruel, and the merciful. By engaging with these quiet, everyday supernatural encounters, rather than just focusing on epic prophecies, he acts not as some apocalyptic king, but as a guardian. He protects the quiet mysteries and those fleeting moments of grace that actually make the world worth remembering, even after the lights go out.
Act 5. Shadows of Isolation. The Visual Weight. This incredibly deep internal and moral struggle isn't just in the narrative, it's masterfully mirrored by the grim visual fabric woven by creator Mike Mignola. Mignola coats this entire grim dark fantasy world in a visual language heavily steeped in German expressionism. We're talking heavily distorted forms, incredibly high-contrast blacks, and a really harsh, jagged aesthetic. It's designed to reflect very subjective, internal, emotional experiences, which gives everything this heavy, subterranean feel. And what's absolutely brilliant here is that these harsh, jagged shadows on the page aren't just stylistic flair. They are the literal visual manifestation of his pervasive isolation. Every dense pool of black ink visually reinforces the oppressive weight of the supernatural landscape pressing down on him. Those heavy shadows perfectly mirror his internal moral struggle against his own dark origins. Act 6. The Power of No. Ragnarok Transformed. Let's get to our final verdict on how this highly disruptive force deals with the end of all things.
Take a look at this timeline of endurance. Notice what's missing? His journey completely lacks any traditional heroic cycle of triumph, where victory brings immense strength and a big reward. Instead, from the moment he's summoned as a harbinger to rejecting the dark prophecies, his life functions as a tragic epic of bittersweet, exhaustive endurance. He just keeps going. He fights the same thankless battles, carrying the crushing weight of a doom he refuses to unleash.
But here is where he truly breaks the myth. When the cyclical destruction of Ragnarok finally, inevitably looms, he completely reframes it. It is no longer this mindless, inescapable destruction dictated by ancient gods. Instead, he turns the inevitable end into a moment of tremendous agency. He navigates the transition of this entire creation myth entirely on his own terms.
Ultimately, his most profound expression of will isn't wielding some massive cosmic power or unlocking destruction. It's his stubborn, deeply human ability to look at his own dark nature, to look at the massive architecture of fate demanding his fall, and just say no. And it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. When the inescapable forces of your own life demand you become something you aren't, will you find the willpower to simply say no?